Welcome to Muslims and Mental Health with Sister Heather, a groundbreaking program looking at mental health issues through the biopsychosocial spiritual paradigm.
Welcome to another episode of Muslims and Mental Health. Today we're going to discuss community psychology looking at the global reach. Particularly, we're going to be looking at the organization Celebrate Mercy. And I'm going to be joined today by El-Messidi. I will be introducing him in just a moment, but I want to talk first about the importance of understanding in the Muslim community the global reach of the community. There's some Muslim in every country of the world. And so one of the unique things about the organization we're going to be discussing today, Celebrate Mercy, is that it has a global reach. And so I look forward to talking to Tariq about that. Now, just to introduce Tariq, Tariq was raised in Knoxville, Tennessee. He's one of the leading American Muslim social entrepreneurs, and he was selected as one of the world's 500 most influential Muslims of 2012. In 2001, he co-founded the Fastathon. It's an event that asks non-Muslims to try fasting for one day, and it raises money to feed the hungry. Fastathons are now held annually at 300 college campuses and have raised over $1 million to feed the hungry. Even the Google Corporation is now hosting annual fastathons in Ramadan at 14 Google headquarters worldwide. After his MBA at the University of Tennessee, Tariq relocated to Ohio in 2007 for a logistics management position at Procter & Gamble. In 2010, he founded Celebrate Mercy, a nonprofit that teaches millions worldwide about the Prophet Muhammad through webcast, events, and social media. The organization has grown to nearly 700,000 Facebook fans and over 1 million YouTube video views. In September of 2012, Tariq coordinated Celebrate Mercy's Mercy Mail campaign, mobilizing Muslims to respond to evil with good by sending condolences to the family of the slain U.S. Ambassador Chris Stevens. The campaign went viral, receiving international media attention, including on CNN and BBC. This year, after the killing of 3 Muslim students in North Carolina, he was a national coordinator of the Feed Their Legacy campaign, where over 300 mosques and Muslim groups in 30 U.S. states conducted charity canned food drives for local food pantries. For the past 15 years, Tariq has served on the board of multiple organizations and mosques and regularly speaks at Muslim conferences. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to start out by asking you about Celebrate Mercy, and if you could tell us all what it is and why you started it.
Sure. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'll go ahead and start with that. Celebrate Mercy started about 5 years ago, and it was basically an idea to try to get prominent Muslim speakers and performers around the world to record short videos and share them on an online conference or an online webcast. Essentially, we said it was kind of like a conference being brought to your living room. So all these global Muslim scholars, speakers, teachers, performers recorded these short videos about the Prophet Muhammad's life and lessons from his life. And we brought it together on this big online event. And our hope was to try to bring people from different countries together to celebrate the legacy and the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So it started off as an online event, one webcast in early 2010, and we quickly realized that this was something that people really enjoyed and they benefited from. We got so many letters, testimonials, emails from people. It really went viral. We had 78 countries, people in 78 countries that tuned into that very first webcast. We had speakers like Sheikh Hamza Yusuf and Yusuf Islam, also known as Cat Stevens. I mean, we had some really big personalities that joined us in that webcast. So we had thousands of viewers from 78 countries in that first webcast, and then we decided to basically turn it into a nonprofit organization whose aim is to teach about the life and the character of the Prophet Muhammad in a relevant way, in a way that really speaks to people's day-to-day lives, their individual lives, their family lives, their communal lives, taking lessons from incidents in his life that we can reapply to modern times in an innovative way through these online webcasts. So we started doing them twice a year, early in the year and then in Ramadan, twice a year, and they eventually grew to these webcasts grew to reach 10,000 people in 90 countries. On social media, we grew really fast as well. As you said, we have a nearly 700,000 Facebook fans. We have a lot of followers on Twitter as well, and on YouTube we've had over 1 million views. So we've now moved not just beyond only webcast to doing also physical, like in-person events. So we do like weekend seminars now in various communities around the country, around the U.S. We do banquets and seminars, 1-day seminars, 2-day seminars. So we've now grown to just beyond just online programs to in-person programs as well.
Okay, and so that sort of is a good segue to my next question. Who is involved with Celebrate Mercy, and how do you engage people globally, which you kind of already touched on a little bit, but I'd like to explore it a little bit more. And then where is it currently located?
Good question. So who's involved? It's really, we have a small staff of about 4 people, 2 full-timers, 2 part-timers right now working with Celebrate Mercy as staff. But mostly its work is done by volunteers. We've had about 2,000 people around the world from many countries that have gone on our website and filled out a volunteer form listing their skill sets, whether it's marketing or translation work and stuff like that. So we have a lot of work that's done by volunteers and interns around the world. In terms of its location, it's in Cincinnati, Ohio, because we started it there. So legally, kind of like in terms of the mailing and the address, it's in Cincinnati, but we don't actually have yet a physical office space. So a lot of the work is done. The staff members work from home. Those 4 individuals are working from home. And then volunteers, and we do a lot through conference calls and webinars with our volunteers. We are hoping in the near future to hopefully start an office space, but right now it's all remotely. But our legal address is basically in Ohio.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's one of the interesting creative features about Celebrate Mercy is that you have such an online presence. That, I mean, it doesn't necessarily require a physical office, I guess, right? And that's one of the sort of unique but very interesting things about it, because you are connecting with people globally. And I think that it's kind of interesting you brought up the volunteers, because I would imagine to manage volunteers sort of virtually, as it were, must be a challenge.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a challenge, and I think with every Muslim organization, there are, it's a challenge to retain volunteers as well. Because people get busy with their life and stuff, and then all that training you put into training a volunteer, and then it goes down the drain if someone says, you know what, I'm really busy, I can't keep doing this. And so there is a lot of turnover sometimes with volunteers, which is a struggle. But the good thing is that there's a lot of enthusiasm. There are a lot of people out there who are willing to do just a couple of hours a week, 5 hours a week, for a good cause, and I think that through Celebrate Mercy's programs that we've done and some of the campaigns that we've done, it's really inspired people. There aren't many groups out there doing things like mobilizing thousands of people to kind of respond to hate with love, or to respond to an evil act with a good act. In a sense, we're kind of fighting against the current of extremism that we find online too, and in social media. Groups like ISIS and extremist groups are really adept with using social media and recruiting through social media and spreading their messages through social media. So we feel like we're kind of fighting against that current and offering an alternative that is very refreshing for Muslims to see. Focusing on what we feel is the core message of Islam and of the Prophet Muhammad, of mercy and responding to evil with good.
Mm-hmm. And so, what are the current initiatives of Celebrate Mercy?
So currently, right now, we have 2 courses that we offer. That on a monthly basis, we're taking it to different communities around the United States. One is called A Portrait of a Prophet, where we basically one scholar goes through an entire 400 hadith text or book called it's called in Arabic the Shama'il of Imam Tirmidhi, and it's really broken down into chapters about his personal interaction with people, how he interacted with his family, how the Prophet Muhammad interacted with his family, with people on a day-to-day basis, how he walked, how he talked, how he looked physically. And so by the end of that weekend, it's an entire weekend intensive program. You're coming away with kind of a portrait of the Prophet, peace be upon him. And it's a very personal, intimate look at him, like on a personal level. So that course we take around the country multiple times a year. And we also have one on the life of the Prophet Muhammad, the Seerah, the Meccan phase of the Seerah, which is also taught from Friday night basically to Sunday night, a whole weekend program. And we take that around the country as well. So like right now we're doing these courses and these banquets once a month in a different community around America, which takes a lot of work, a lot of event planning. And we're still, we still do like an annual webcast as well. So those are the main initiatives of, we have 2 courses, and we also do the banquets as well. And we also are doing online webcasts. And we're always, every single day, if you look on our Facebook and on our Twitter, we are posting, beautiful gems and reminders of quotes, videos, articles that relate to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Even if we find an article of just, someone doing a beautiful act, or a beautiful campaign, or something that we felt embodies, something that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, would have loved, something that embodies his character, whether it's by a Muslim or someone who's not Muslim, we post beautiful reminders and we try and tie it into a message that the Prophet Muhammad had in a hadith or from his life story. So we're trying to really make the seerah and his character and his life relevant to our times today.
Now, the annual webcast, will that be during Ramadan this year?
Actually, it's going to be close to the end of the year.
Okay.
So we're going to be doing it in January of 2016, and we're going to be filming it basically starting right after Ramadan. We're using Ramadan kind of as a way to fundraise for the filming, which will take place the second half of the year.
So one of the reasons we actually chose to profile Celebrate Mercy at this time is because it will be shown either just before or during Ramadan. And because I think that it's one of the important organizations that people should be aware of and consider because of its global reach. So,
well, one of the things we are doing, I just want to mention this real quick, is that just a few days before Ramadan, we do have the Portrait of a Prophet course in New Jersey, which we are going to be live streaming for people that can register and watch it. And it's going to be available not only live on June 12th weekend from New Jersey, but we're going to be allowing people to watch that throughout the month of Ramadan as well. So the Portrait of the Prophet course is kind of like a pre-Ramadan course that we're offering right before the month. And we'll be offering the recording of that throughout the month of Ramadan, as we're also fundraising for our upcoming webcast recordings.
And so I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you, how do you see the efforts of Celebrate Mercy affecting the future of both the American community and then the communities abroad?
That's a really good question. I think the main thing that I think that we've lost as a community is an emphasis on the central theme of love for the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Because like it's if you worship the prayer and the fasting and the pilgrimage and all of the rituals that as Muslims we're obligated to perform, that can become very dry without the kind of like love fueling it. You know what I mean? So like I feel like one of the most beautiful stories I love of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is when someone came up to him, one of the Bedouins, and asked him like, when is the last hour? When is basically the end of time, essentially? And he said, what have you prepared for it? And he said, I haven't fasted much, extra fast. I haven't prayed extra prayers, but I do know that I love God and I love the messenger of God. And his response was so beautiful. He said, you will be with those you love, then you will be with those you love. Basically, don't worry. Like if you have love for God, you have love for the Prophet, peace be upon him, then that is really the most important core aspect of our faith. And I feel like growing up here in America, going to Sunday school, often, learning the life of the Prophet Muhammad is a series of bullet points almost. It's just like a social studies class. You learn like this happened this year, this happened this year, this happened this year. You have to memorize some dates and some names, but it's not really about like, they aren't really good at inculcating that love of the Prophet, peace be upon him, that like when you read these stories, how does it like think about how this relates to your life and think about what he was going through emotionally at this time, at this incident. Think of what it was like to be insulted by your own family, your own uncle, to be physically, to be assassination attempts almost over 10 times, that your life was at risk by people trying to assassinate you in your lifetime, rejected by your own family and your own companions and best friends, physically persecuted, I feel like what Celebrate Mercy is doing is helping people to emotionally connect to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as a human being, above all else, and to basically focus on his humanity. And I think like that perspective for people is very moving. It's very inspiring. And I think it's kind of going back to the meat and potatoes of what Islam is supposed to be about, which is essentially love. It began, in Mecca, it began with basically love. Love of God, love of the Prophet Muhammad, and the core principles of our faith before, it was really faith before fiqh. It was like, basically faith before law, the spirit before the law, even though the law is important, but I feel like often we're missing that core aspect of love. And I feel like Celebrate Mercy is reviving that, hopefully, in people's hearts, the love of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and also clarifying, misconceptions about him that you often see in the media and online and some hateful comments out there. Like it clarifies things about his life that people misconstrue.
Okay, well, at this point, I need to take a break for our sponsor, but we'll be back shortly.
Hi, welcome to Adelante. This is Adelante Recovery, and my name is Yvette Kuglin, and I'm part of the staff.
Adelante Recovery Center has helped people in dual diagnosis for 5 years. We accept most PPO insurances and provide luxury accommodations and 24-hour support. To speak with an admissions counselor, call 1-888-242-4450.
A lot of time we don't even know what's wrong with us, and sometimes we need to get away to figure that out. So if you want to go for a little retreat out in Corona Del Mar, which is a confidential location, we're here to help. So we're only a phone call away. Thank you.
Welcome back to Muslims and Mental Health. Today we're talking about community psychology, looking at a global reach. Particularly, we're looking at the organization Celebrate Mercy with Tariq El-Messidi. And I want to continue our conversation and ask you, Tariq, what do you think is often missed about the people who participate in Celebrate Mercy?
I'm assuming you're talking about the people who are helping to run the organization, maybe some of the volunteers.
Or actually, I was also thinking about the people who watch the program.
Okay, yeah. So from the viewer's perspective, I think people don't realize that. I mentioned that we have 10,000 viewers of our webcast. A lot of people don't realize that about 50% of those viewers are watching in a group setting. So a lot of people are coming together. They're hosting a party at their homes, kind of like a social gathering at their homes to watch it. There are a lot of mosques that participate, a lot of schools, a lot of universities, MSAs. Our largest group that we've had is about 400 people in Kansas City. But we've had very big groups in Sarajevo in Bosnia, for example. In New Zealand, we had a really big group of about 200 people. So a lot of people don't realize that it's like a global conference essentially, and it's in a way people, we've gotten beautiful testimonials from people that have said, this is the first time I've really felt connected to an ummah, to a global fraternity or brotherhood and sisterhood of Muslims around the world, because during the webcast, there's a chat room, people are chatting, hey, assalamu alaikum from Sarajevo, assalamu alaikum from Cairo, assalamu alaikum from here. And like people are chatting. During the program, we take like 30-second breaks where groups come on their webcams, and they're like, that you can see this big group all over, in some part of the world. So it really, like, not only are you learning and you're being inspired by the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the videos of these speakers, but you're also connecting yourselves with a global community. Mm-hmm. So I think people often miss that. They see, oh, this is just another conference or it's another video or something, but it's really actually an interactive experience, and it's a moving experience to see Muslims around the world, engaged in this beautiful celebration. So I think that's often missed. I also think, like, from a volunteer's perspective, from behind the scenes, people don't realize just how much work is involved in putting together just a 3-hour webcast, and also our trailer videos, which often has like reenacted scenes from the seerah, from the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him. There's a lot of work involved in just like every one of the 30 speakers that we record around the world, where we have to transcribe those videos word for word, type them out, highlight them, figure out how to put them in in the cinematic trailer, exact quotes by a speaker, and interplayed against the filming scenes that we have. And then also the placement, like even coming up with the content that we ask the speakers to record and what lessons we want them to focus on from the Prophet's life. It takes a lot of research. There's a lot of behind the scenes work to research the content, to script it out, to film, these scenes around the world. I mean, you can see in our most recent trailer just the scene of the Prophet, peace be upon him, from inside the cave before he made the journey to Medina. How do you get like a dove and a dove's nest right outside of the cave, and a spider's web, there's camels and horses and like all these things, like, when we filmed that in West Africa, like there's a lot of work involved that people don't realize from behind the scenes, especially with just, a couple of full-time staff, 2 part-time staff. It's a lot of work, to even film these things and bring them to people's homes. So we hope that, people will, I'm just saying this so that hopefully people will make dua for us, that we can continue to do this and grow, inshallah.
Inshallah. So given that, that's a great segue, because I want to ask you what can be done to make a positive contribution to Celebrate Mercy, and the kind of work that you're doing.
Well, I think we usually tell people that they can help us in 3 ways. One is by signing up as a volunteer. They can go to our website, celebratemercy.com, and fill out a volunteer form. Let us know how much time you have every week, what skills you have, and inshallah, we will get back to you and try to plug you into how you can help, even if it's just a couple of hours a week in some way. Like one of the projects we're hoping to do is to translate and is to provide closed captioning on all our videos, especially to reach people who are deaf, and to have even in English to transcribe all the videos we've ever done with closed captions, and to translate them into other languages like Spanish, like French, so that people can change the language of the subtitles, and it will benefit more people. We've even had requests for Mandarin, because for Chinese Muslims to be able to benefit from our webcast, our YouTube videos. So like people can help in many ways as volunteers, and even if they're interested in bringing some of our courses to their own community, if you're active in your own mosque, you're interested in bringing one of our weekend programs to your masjid, that's a great way to volunteer too. So volunteering is definitely a way. Like I said before, just continuing to make dua for us and to follow us on social media, to subscribe to us on YouTube and on Facebook, on Twitter. That's a great way to support us and to tell your friends about it. And then also, obviously, like, we're a nonprofit, and donations go a long way. Just $1 donated can sometimes print 10 posters that will go around, to different places around America. So most of our income is coming through regular monthly donors. Some people giving $10 a month, $30 a month, and so on. It varies. But they can donate online, inshallah, especially during Ramadan. We're waging a campaign to try to raise $100,000 in Ramadan to help with our next filming for our next webcast, and some other projects, like I said, about starting our office space and other things. So we'll be doing that. We'll be launching that in Ramadan, and hopefully that will be a great way to contribute as well. So people's time, their prayer, and their money, that would be a great way to support us.
So in terms of the donations, where can people make those donations? And in addition, will the launch for Ramadan, will it also be on the website, or will it be somewhere else? So
yes, we'll be promoting that on the website and social media. It will be a launch good campaign but we'll be promoting it through our email list, through our website, through our social media, and celebratemercy.com is where to go, and they'll be able to learn all about that fundraising campaign in Ramadan.
Okay, great. So you basically answered many of the questions that I had in that answer. And I want to ask you if there's anything else that hasn't been covered that you would like to share with the viewers about Celebrate Mercy.
Yeah, I think the only thing I left out was that we try to do once a year some kind of a campaign, because we don't want people to just come learn about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and then to love him more, but you need an outlet to express that love. Sometimes you have all these things like these cartoon drawings and these caricatures, and sometimes very kind of disgusting films that are sometimes made against or misportraying the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the world often sees in the media Muslims reacting with anger to those things, and it's natural. Like when someone you love is insulted or misportrayed, even our own parents, our own family members, it's natural to feel anger when that happens. But it's how you direct that anger and express that anger, which is a problem sometimes. Definitely, our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, do not cause harm, nor respond to harm with harm. So often people, they see these these acts by people like Pamela Geller and the cartoon drawings and these things, and they want to respond in a negative way or with insults, or to respond to an insult with an insult. But at Celebrate Mercy, we try to provide an outlet that is much more productive and much more what we feel is prophetic. And so, a campaign that we did when the 3 Muslims were killed in North Carolina, Dia, Yusr, and Razan, was, they were killed by a next door neighbor that hated them. And we basically, we launched a campaign to respond by feeding our neighbors. And the whole campaign, Feed Their Legacy, Celebrate Mercy, was directing the marketing for that. We put together the website for that. That was fully funded by Celebrate Mercy, the website, the Feed Their Legacy website. Even though many organizations collaborated on that campaign, Celebrate Mercy was taking the lead on the marketing side of it. And we also, like you mentioned, there was a campaign to send letters to the family of Chris Stevens, of the U.S. ambassador Chris Stevens, when he was killed in Libya. That was around the same time when there was a lot of anger because of that YouTube video that came out about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that really angered many Muslims. So we got 7,700 letters. There were 7,700 letters written by Muslims in 115 countries, condolence letters to the family of Ambassador Chris Stevens. And our whole slogan for that campaign was the beautiful statement of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he stood up for the funeral of a man a funeral that went by him, someone that was not a Muslim, and his companions asked him, why are you standing up for this funeral, and it's not a Muslim funeral? And he said, is it not a human soul? That was his response. Is it not a human soul? And so these campaigns focus really on the humanity of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And like one of my most, and I'll end with this, one of the most beautiful things I love about or story of the Prophet Muhammad is when he first entered the city of Medina after that long journey, and after years of persecution of himself, of his family, of his companions in Mecca. The first thing he said when he entered Medina to the people there was, spread peace, afshu salam, spread peace, feed people, maintain ties, family ties, and pray at night when people are sleeping. But the first three statements he said, feeding people, spreading peace, and maintaining family ties, are all related to your relationships with people. Before your relationship with God, it was your relationship with other human beings. And he didn't say feed Muslims or, you know what I mean, spread peace to Muslims. It was feed everyone. You know what I mean? Spread peace to everyone. And I think that, you know, the campaigns, we try to do a campaign every year that mobilizes all of the supporters and the viewers that we have towards some kind of a prophetic action, something that is in line with Prophet Muhammad's character. And that's one of the, apart from our webcasts and our seminars, these campaigns we found to be very inspiring, and many people love them. And we get a lot of new supporters because of those campaigns. And alhamdulillah, like we found many other Muslim organizations like ISNA, like MPAC, like CARE, and others, they've collaborated with us on those campaigns as well.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing about Celebrate Mercy. And I want to transition now into some of our fun questions and ask you who your favorite or who your Muslim hero, if you have one, is and why.
That was a good question. I would say probably the companion of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Salman al-Farisi, or Salman the Persian. I think his story is really interesting because, you know, apart from the vast majority of the Prophet Muhammad's companions, he was almost like a foreigner in a sense that he was a minority, that he came from a different land. And he started off, you know, kind of the Zoroastrian faith, and then he became a Christian. He was really searching for the truth his entire life. He left Zoroastrianism to become a Christian, and then, you know, a Christian monk told him, you need to go to Arabia because there's going to be a new prophet there. You know, there's a prophecy of a new prophet that's coming to Arabia, and so he left, you know, where he grew up and his family. He was actually captured on the way and sold into slavery to a Jewish man, and so he really he experienced many different faiths. And he was as a slave in Medina. He was there when the Prophet Muhammad arrived, and the new community of Muslims was blossoming in Medina. And just the story of him becoming Muslim and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, engaging the entire community to free him from slavery. And you know, his intellect, his sincerity, his search for the truth, his unending quench, you know, his desire for the truth, I think is really beautiful. And how the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, you know, Salman is one of us. He's one of my family members, basically. You know, his story is amazing. He even, you know, during the time when, you know, many tribes around Medina from the Meccans were trying to conquer or take over Medina, it was his idea to build that trench around. He said, you know, the Persians, they have this idea of a trench that prevents horses from jumping, you know, over, or from running into the city. So his intellect, his prowess, his sincerity, I've always admired, and I loved his story.
That's very interesting. It's one that we haven't heard before, so that's great. And so, what is your favorite concept in Islam, and why?
I would have to say my favorite concept is the Quranic and the kind of the prophetic concept of repelling evil with good. You know, I talked about that a little bit about some of the campaigns. I think that's often something that's overlooked, and I think it's much more needed in our time. Is just the concept of responding to evil with good and forgiving those who have wronged you, and just the power of that. Like, you know, like one of my favorite. Another, you know, I'm going to say this really quickly, but one of my favorite stories as well from the Prophet Muhammad's life is there's a companion named Amr ibn al-As, who he was the one that he tried to bribe the king of Abyssinia and his bishops from allowing the Muslims to stay there, to seek refuge there. And he was a genius in terms of political strategery. I would say he was kind of like the Karl Rove of Quraysh in a sense, you know what I mean? And after 20 years of being an enemy to the Muslims and even fighting in battles against the Muslims and trying to destroy the Muslim community, he eventually became Muslim, and the Prophet received him with such open arms and forgiveness that he said, later in life, he said, like, I used to hate the Prophet more than anyone else, and when I became Muslim, I loved him more than anyone else. And he said, if you asked me to describe for you how the Prophet looked, I couldn't even tell you, because I could not even look at him. I couldn't stare at him out of awe of him, after becoming Muslim. And he was one just a couple of years after becoming Muslim who went to the Prophet Muhammad and asked him, who do you love the most of all people on earth? Who do you love the most? Because he thought, because the Prophet treated him so well, so beautifully, so kindly, that the Prophet would say, I love you more than anyone else. But the Prophet, being, the most truthful person there is, said, I love Aisha more than anyone else, Then he said, okay, then who? And then he said, Abu Bakr. And he said, then who? Omar. And he kept going and going. He said, I wish I never asked him that question. But just and this was just like after a year or two of being Muslim, after 20 years of being an enemy of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So I feel like this idea of forgiving those who have wronged you, prayer, and doing good to those who have wronged you, I think that's really what won over all of the people around the Prophet, peace be upon him. And I think that concept is really needed in our times when, often Islam and Muslims, there's a lot of Islamophobia out there. I feel like, if we could go to Pastor Terry Jones, I think his name is, and just, what if Muslims just sent him a bunch of gifts, thousands of gifts on Eid, or you know what I mean? Or people who hate us, if we just won them over, invited them to our homes, and had food with them, or invited them to our mosques, really, kind of kill them with kindness, they say. I feel like that concept is prophetic. It's part of our tradition, and I think we need to emphasize it more.
Mm-hmm. And so, lastly, what is your favorite word and why?
That was a difficult one. I went with a word that I always liked, in the English language. It's the word magnanimous, and it's because I studied, I'm kind of I was kind of a nerd in high school. I took 4 years of Latin. So, it's this word magnanimous comes from magnus meaning great and animus meaning soul. And so literally it comes from great soul. And it's really showing kindness and good character to people, even to people who are your rivals, or people that that you may not be friends with, but showing greatness of character to people, even those people that you may not like. And I think I think really Celebrate Mercy and the Prophet's life in general is all about magnanimity of character. So I think the word magnanimous has always been a cool word that if you actually look at the usage of the word over the last few decades, it's gone down. People don't use it that much anymore, but I think it's a beautiful word, and it has beautiful origins too.
Well, what a great message to, as we get closer to entering the month of Ramadan. So thank you for sharing, and thank you again for coming on today to discuss Celebrate Mercy. This concludes another episode of Muslims and Mental Health. As always, we're interested in your feedback, your concerns, and your questions. You can reach us at nafshealertherapy@gmail.com. That's NAFSHEALER therapy@gmail.com. Thank you.